started in the last lecture. So last time we had just seen a basic introduction to rotational mechanics. So various optional names for this chapter, as I told you: rotational dynamics, or rotational mechanics, or rigid body mechanics. Okay. So we had seen last time that for rigid body motion, there are three categories of motion. Two of them are pure types of motion, pure translation and pure rotation. And the third is the general rigid body motion, which is a combination of rotation and translation. So types of motion. For rigid bodies. Just a moment, guys. I'll join you again. Good evening, students. Very sorry, because of some technical problem, my system had hanged. Actually, the router had hanged over here, so I was not able to access the Zoom meeting. Hope all of you are online, right? So we will restart the lecture. Okay, so we had discussed last time the different types of rigid body motion. So we saw that there was the two types of pure motions, which is called pure translation and pure rotation. Then there was pure rotation, which is basically rotation about a fixed axis. And then there was the third type of motion, which we call the general rigid body motion. Which is basically a combination of rotation plus translation. Yeah, beta, any doubt? Does anybody have a doubt? Somebody was okay. So as I mentioned, we will start this chapter with a full analysis of pure rotation. Whatever we have done in mechanics earlier that covered pure translation. So we'll start with the analysis of rigid body motion where there is pure rotation happening. And from there, we will, once we understand how to write equations and how to analyze dynamics, etc. of pure rotation, we will come to a situation where we combine the equations that we have learned for pure translation earlier, like F is equal to ma, and net work done is equal to change in kinetic plus potential, those kind of things. We will combine them with the new things that we are learning for pure rotation, and from that we will get the equations of the general rigid body motion, which is a combination of rotation and translation. So let's begin by understanding today what we call kinematics of pure rotation. That is how to describe the equations of motion for pure rotation. So as you know, kinematics are about equations of motion, but here the type of motion is pure rotation of a rigid body. So let's visualize some random shaped rigid body like this. And this is a fixed axis about which it is rotating. So fixed axis about which the rotation is happening. So to define the motion itself, we first of all define angular parameters. Okay. That is angular position, okay, angular displacement, okay, angular velocity. Now, last time when we had discussed circular motion, we had defined angular speed, but now we will define angular velocity, making it a vector, and we will define angular acceleration, also defining this as a vector. And we will see that these are two examples of what we call axial vectors. Okay, that means they are vectors whose direction is given by the axis of rotation. Okay. So let's understand the angular parameters. Make a quick note of this part first. This you need not write down above part because we've already seen types of motion for rigid bodies in the introduction to rotation last time that we were discussing. Okay, so let's see how we define the angular parameters this time, and especially let's understand the angular velocity and angular acceleration as axial vectors. So just to recap how we had seen for circular motion of a particle. So circular motion for a particle, we had seen that, we define the center of the circular motion as the origin. We define the plane in which the circular motion is happening as our xy plane. And therefore the path of the particle is a circular path in the xy plane, okay, around the origin. So it was very simple matter in that sense. We could just show the path or the trajectory of our particle as basically a circle whose center is the origin of our xy system, and the circle is lying in the xy plane. So if at some instant t equal to t, the particle is located here, then we saw that the position vector of the particle is at some angle theta with respect to our reference axis, which is the x-axis. So the angular position is nothing but this theta. So in circular motion, we had seen angular position was theta. So now after some time, if the particle moved from here to here, then in that time delta t, the angular position shifted by a certain amount. So that became our angular displacement. Delta theta became the angular displacement. And accordingly, we saw that the rate of change of this angular displacement with respect to time, that became our angular speed. It was d theta by dt, instantaneous rate of change, and angular acceleration as a magnitude, we defined it as d omega by dt, or d2 theta by dt square, or that can even be defined as omega d omega by d theta. Okay. So these were the angular parameters for circular motion. So I'll come back to this relationship between circular motion and rotational motion in after some time also, but for the moment we just need the relation, the angular parameters. Okay. Now as opposed to this, if we look at what we are now seeing, which is pure rotation of a rigid body, okay, the difference becomes that it's not a single particle, it is a collection of many particles. A rigid body is a collection of particles that are rigidly attached to each other. So if that rigid body is rotating about this axis, okay, so basically, this can be a three-dimensional situation also, where this is the axis about which the rotation is happening. Okay, and the rigid body is something three-dimensional, like a cylinder, which is rotating like this about. So it's going round and round about this axis. So at different times, the cylinder is like this. It's going round like this. So it could be something like this also. So in this case, if this is the z-axis, so in my diagram here, somewhere here would be the x-axis and somewhere here would be the y-axis. So every particle in the rigid body, if the axis of rotation is the z-axis, then every particle that is part of the rigid body is in circular motion about the z-axis. Okay, so that diagram here, taking the z-axis coming out of the plane, would correspond to something like this. Our x-axis would be over here, our y-axis would be over here. Okay, and you have to imagine this like a solid rigid body which is three-dimensional. So it is not just the body, all the particles in the body are not just lying in the xy plane. Some of them are coming outside the xy plane, some of them are going into the xy plane. But if the axis of rotation is the z-axis, okay, then every particle is describing some kind of a circular path. Different particles have different radii, but all of them have a common axis, and that axis is the z-axis. We can't say that all of them are in circular motion about the origin, because again you'll understand that if this is my cylinder and it's rotating about the z-axis, and let's say this is the x-axis, then a particle that is, let's say, located over here, for that the center of the motion is this origin. But another particle that is, let's say, located over here, for that the center of the circular motion is not the origin. It is some point on the z-axis. But you can see that both these circular motions are happening about a common axis, that is the z-axis. So you can see that if the fixed axis of rotation is our z-axis, okay, then it implies that all particles are in circular motion, okay, about the z-axis, about that common axis. That means about a center that lies on this common fixed axis, which is in this case the z-axis. Okay, so that is the difference between just looking at a simple case of circular motion of a particle versus looking at the case of pure rotation of a rigid body about a fixed axis. So that's the first point to understand in the comparison between the two. So it's not a single particle in circular motion, but it's a collection of infinite number of all these particles, and not all of them are having the same center of rotation. And obviously they are having different radii of rotation also, but all of them are having a common axis. So all of their centers of rotation or centers of their circular motion are lying on the common axis, which we have taken as a z-axis. Okay, and apart from that, they are all having different radii, and they are all having different points as the center of circular motion. So having understood this, now next thing what we do is within our body, we define some kind of a reference line. Okay. For example, if this is a cylinder, we might define the reference line as the axis of the cylinder. So we define some kind of a reference line within the body. And with the body, that reference line is also rotating. So the angular parameters are related to that reference line. So angular position theta becomes the angle made by a reference line in the rigid body with respect to a reference axis, example x-axis, which we've taken in this case. Okay, so I'll just minimize this a little so you can understand the comparison of this situation with circular motion of a single particle. And we'll continue from here. Just make a note of this, people. Okay, so next up, let's understand the rest of the angular parameters.
Sir, 1 minute.
Sir,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, beta, tell me.
sir, could you just show that?
Yeah, I'm showing it, Ankit, but any doubt in this?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, done now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let's say that our rigid body of some odd kind of shape, it was here at some time t, and as a result of its rotation about this axis, after some time, it's become like this. Okay. So it shouldn't actually change shape, but you'll understand that I'm drawing a rough diagram, so it's very difficult to replace the shape. But after some time, t plus delta t, it has become like this. Okay. So now you can see that the reference line within the rigid body, which was here earlier, that reference line has gone here. Okay. So that reference line has rotated by how much? Delta theta. Now the interesting thing is, apart from that reference line, if you see any other point also arbitrarily, okay, so I'll explain this with a different diagram where, let's say, I have a more structured kind of situation. So I have something that looks like a rectangular plate, okay, and it's rotating about this axis over here. So this is where it was at some time t, and after some time, because of rotation, it became like this. Okay. So you will see that if you consider a particle over here, it has gone from this position to, let's say, this position now. So it has had some kind of angular displacement, delta theta. Now, if you consider some other particle, like you consider a particle which is over here, this particle. Okay, so let's say this particle is the particle B. This particle was the particle A. So A has gone from this position to this position. Now, what about B? B has gone from this position to now this position. You will see that B has also had the same angular displacement. So every particle within the rigid body will have the same amount of angular displacement. As this goes from here to here, so whatever is the angular displacement for our reference line, same is the angular displacement for any other particle also. If this has moved by delta theta, then a particle over here would have also moved by the same amount delta theta. So with respect to our reference axis, as the angular position of the reference line keeps changing, the reference line has some angular displacement delta theta, which is the change in angular position. But that is also the angular displacement of every other particle, which is part of the rigid body. So angular displacement delta theta, which is basically what it is, the change in angular position. So it is like the final value of theta minus the initial value of theta. But the interesting thing is that though we have measured the angular position for the particular reference line, but the angular displacement is not restricted to only that particular reference line. It is the same for all particles. So in any given interval of time, if the reference line used to define the angular position undergoes an angular displacement of delta theta, then all particles in the rigid body also have the same delta theta. They have the identical value of delta theta. Okay. So that is what makes the angular displacement a universal quantity for all particles in the rigid body. The whole rigid body has one common value of angular displacement. Okay. And you notice something interesting that is not true about any other parameter. Like, for example, the distance traveled by two different particles is not going to be the same. The displacement of two different particles is not going to be the same. By the time a rod rotates from here to here, a particle over here has traveled a distance like this. It has undergone a displacement like this. Compared to that, a particle over here has traveled a distance like this and it has undergone a displacement like this. So they're having different distances, different displacements, but both of them are having the same angular displacement, which is nothing but the angle by which any reference line within the rigid body has rotated. The value of delta theta is common for both of them. Okay. So if I have two separate points, like the point A over here and the point B over here, the distance traveled by A is not equal to the distance traveled by B. The displacement of A is not equal to the displacement of B. Okay, because they are in circular motions of different radii. Okay, but the angular displacement of particle A is equal to the angular displacement of particle B, which is the overall angular displacement of the rigid body. So that's why we say that angular parameters are useful parameters to define the kinematics, because they are the single term that define the rotational motion of the entire rigid body. Okay, so hope this point is clear and just make a note of this. Okay, so now next thing, we'll see how to define angular velocity as an axial vector. So the angular velocity will be defined by a magnitude into a unit vector, where the magnitude is equal to d theta by dt. So it is the instantaneous rate of change of angular position with respect to time. Okay. And it is therefore measured in radians per second. Okay, but and its direction is given by the unit vector n cap. Now n cap is called the axial unit vector. Okay. That means it is the unit vector along the axis of rotation. Okay. In accordance with right hand system. Okay, that is, you'll recall from cross product of vectors earlier, we had seen right-handed system that anti-clockwise rotation corresponds to coming out and clockwise rotation corresponds to going in. Okay, so I'll discuss more about this. Make a note of this first.
Sir, it will be along z-axis n cap vector.
Yeah, in that particular example that we had shown where the rotation was happening along the z-axis, then our n cap will become k cap. Okay, so for example, if the fixed axis of rotation is the z-axis, okay, then n cap will be either plus k cap or minus k cap. Now, which of the two this is, it actually depends on the sense of rotation. So that's where we'll understand the right-handed system. By sense of rotation, we mean clockwise or anti-clockwise. So just like we use the right-handed system to understand the unit vector for cross product, like that we will see a repeat of the concept of axial unit vector for pure rotation according to the right-handed system. Okay, so right-handed system is very simple basically, that if you curl your right hand fingers along the actual sense of rotation, then your right hand thumb points along the axis. So let's understand that as the right hand curl method to determine n cap.
Sir, we have learned this now.
Yeah, but we've learned it in the sense of this thing, cross product of vectors. So you rotate your right hand fingers from A to B if you're doing A cross B, or the right hand palm system that we'd see. So we'll just modify that a little bit to understand the right hand curl rule for the determination of the axial unit vector. It's actually much simpler than the cross product one. So curl your right hand fingers to point along the sense of rotation. Okay. Extend the thumb so the thumb points along the axis of rotation. The thumb points along n cap, that is the axial unit vector. Okay. So before you write this down, I'll just demonstrate what this means with an example. So I'm stopping this screen share. So suppose this is a rigid body, okay, and it's rotating like this. Okay. So given that it's rotating like this about this fixed axis, so think of this like a fixed axis and it's rotating about this. Now, while it's rotating about this fixed axis, what I'll do is I'll curl my right hand fingers along the sense of rotation. So the sense of rotation is like this. So my right hand fingers are curling like this. So wherever my thumb points, that becomes the axis of rotation. Okay. So imagine now I have something that is rotating about a weird axis like this. It's rotating like this. So where is the unit vector, the n cap unit vector? So what I'll have to do is I'll have to curl my fingers along the sense of rotation. And then my thumb is pointing in a particular direction. So wherever my thumb is pointing, that becomes the axis of rotation. So you can see that instead of rotating like this, if it was rotating, instead of from here to here, which means that my fingers have to curl like this. So my thumb is pointing in that direction like this. Okay. Suppose it was rotating in the opposite sense. So it was like this. It's going from here to here like this. So in that case, I would have to curl my fingers in which direction? In the opposite direction like this. Because it's rotating like this. Okay. So I'll curl my fingers like this. So now my thumb is pointing in this direction below. Okay. So the axis of rotation becomes opposite. Okay. So if it's rotating like this and I curl my fingers, my thumb is pointing upwards. That means I'll take, so the sense of rotation is like this along my fingers. Okay. So the thumb is pointing upwards. So the axis of rotation is pointing upwards. Whereas if it's rotating like this, such that when I curl my fingers, my thumb is pointing downwards. You can see my fingers are curling like this. So the sense of rotation with my fingers is like this. It's like this. So then my thumb is pointing downwards. That means the axis of rotation is downwards. So when we show this in a two-dimensional diagram, this becomes actually very simple. It becomes that anti-clockwise is coming out and clockwise is going in. So if some kind of a rigid body here is rotating in this kind of sense, like this, okay. So you can see that it's an anti-clockwise or counterclockwise. So my unit vector for the axial omega will be coming out of the plane. Okay. So if I've taken this as my x-axis and this as my y-axis, then you can see coming out of the plane will be basically plus k cap. Whereas if the same thing is rotating such that when I see it from this side, the sense of rotation appears to be clockwise. Okay. So now when you curl your fingers, you'll see your thumb is going into the plane. Whereas in the anti-clockwise sense, if you curl your right hand fingers, your thumb is pointing outwards towards you. So clockwise basically means your thumb is pointing into the plane. So n cap is going into the plane. So again, in this case, if I have selected my x and y plane to be this one with x and y axis like this, then into the plane is my negative z axis. So that means in this case, n cap would become minus of k cap. In this case, n cap is plus of k cap because it's anti-clockwise and I've taken xy plane to be like this. Okay, so hope this right hand curl rule is clear to all of you, how to determine the unit vector for the axis of rotation. Okay. It's very much linked to how we had seen this for cross product of vectors long time back. But this is going to be very important throughout rotation, not just for angular velocity and angular acceleration, but later when we look at things like torque, which is moment of a force, which is the action of force in such a way that it's creating rotation about an axis of revolution. Okay, so that's our angular velocity. And now angular acceleration. That is just defined as rate of change of angular velocity, instantaneous rate of change of angular velocity. So if omega is equal to omega n cap, or in general, actually, omega is equal to omega n cap. Magnitude into unit vector. Okay. And in pure rotation, the axis is fixed. Okay. Therefore, n cap is constant. It is not changing with time. Okay. Therefore, d omega by dt is just rate of change of angular speed into n cap. So therefore, angular acceleration just becomes this. Or we can say that alpha's magnitude is d omega by dt, which is equal to d2 theta by dt square, which is equal to omega d omega by d theta, like we did in circular motion. But alpha's direction is n cap, which is the axial unit vector. Then, okay. Okay. Now, a very interesting aspect of this is that angular velocity and acceleration, that is angular acceleration only alpha, are axial vectors. Okay. But angular displacement is not a vector. Okay. In fact, it cannot be defined as a vector. Okay. Now, there's a specific reason for this, and I want you to find it out yourself. Okay. Find out before next session. You will find this in any good reference book like Resnick Halliday or NCRT. Okay. Or you will find videos on YouTube and all based on this, but I would prefer that you go through reference books. In the first few pages of rotational mechanics chapter only, they'll explain. But what I want to see is that I want you to read that section of the reference book and interpret it yourself and tell me if you understood or not. Okay. I'll explain it if required in the next class. Okay. So don't forget to find out about this. And in fact, if any of you can explain during the lecture in your own words why it cannot be defined as a vector, it will be very nice. Okay, for a change, that you can explain something to the class instead of me. So I'll look forward to that. So you investigate that yourself, that what is the reason behind this, that this cannot be defined as a vector, whereas angular velocity and angular acceleration are vectors. So that's just at this stage, we'll just keep note of this fact. Now, the next thing we'll see from this is how to define the velocity and acceleration of any particle within the rigid body which is in pure rotation. So while the rigid body is in pure rotation and we know the angular parameters and all, how do we define the velocity and acceleration of any constituent particle within the rigid body? Let's understand that next. So again, we are taking a sort of general arbitrary shape of a rigid body, and we are sort of understanding the axis as the axis coming out of the plane. So if I were to define this as the xy plane, this is the z axis. So let's say it has angular speed omega and angular acceleration alpha like this coming out of the plane. Okay. Now let's consider any arbitrary point within the rigid body which is located over here, this point P. So that point, if we drop a perpendicular from the axis of rotation to that point, that is called the position vector of that point with respect to the axis of rotation. Okay. So I'm just magnifying this a little to make this easier to understand. So within our rigid body, we are considering a point P whose location is given by its position vector with respect to the axis of rotation. Okay, so this is a particle P at position R with respect to the fixed axis. So what this basically means is that the vector R is the perpendicular drop from the axis of rotation to the point P. Okay, so you need to understand this properly in 3 dimensions to make sense of why I have mentioned like this, that is. So let's look at it 3-dimensionally. If this is my axis of rotation, okay, and this is my xy plane or whatever, and the axis of rotation is the z axis. Okay, now consider a 3-dimensional kind of rigid body which is rotating about this axis like this. So when we consider any point in this, the position vector of the point is not the r vector joining the origin of my system with this. Okay, if that particle was a particle in individual motion, then yes, we would have taken the position vector as the vector joining the origin of our system with the point. But here, that particle is in circular motion about the z axis because it's part of a rigid body which is rotating about the z axis. So its position vector will be this one. From the z axis, you have to drop a perpendicular onto that particle, and that is the position vector. So as the whole rigid body rotates, that particle goes in circular motion about the z axis, and that magnitude of that r becomes the, okay, so it becomes the radius of the circular motion. So mod r is the radius of the particle P's circular motion, or you can say its rotation about the fixed axis of rotation. So if that is the case, then you can see that the velocity of the particle, or let's start with speed. The speed of the particle is r omega from circular motion. And the velocity vector is along the tangent or the tangential unit vector theta cap. So we write velocity as r omega theta cap, where you'll remember that in this diagram, this is the radial unit vector along the r vector, and this is the tangential unit vector. theta cap along the tangent, because that particle is describing a circle like this. So at that instant, the tangent to the circular path, that is the direction of the tangential unit vector, and the radial line of the circular path, that is the direction of the. Okay, so here r cap is the radial unit vector. So r cap is basically equal to r vector divided by its own magnitude, whereas theta cap is the tangential unit vector. So theta cap is the unit vector perpendicular to r cap in the plane of the point P's circular motion. Okay. So in that plane in which that point P is in a circular path, the unit vector which is perpendicular to r cap, that is our theta cap or a tangential unit vector. So this equation captures both the things, that the direction of the velocity is along the tangential unit vector, okay, and the magnitude of the velocity is r into omega. Okay. So there's a reason why I'm looking at this in so much detail again, because now we will convert this to a vector relation between r vector and omega vector.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, can you scroll up one?
Yeah, sure. This part?
Yes, sir, that note part.
Okay.
7.
Yeah. Yeah, people done with this part?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so now we will understand this relationship between we'll understand it as a vector relation between vector v, vector r, and vector omega. So to understand that, we'll actually first look at the relation between axial unit vector, tangential unit vector, and radial unit vector. And there's a very interesting relationship between these three. So let's explore that first. Okay. So if you look at a particular circular motion or rotational motion happening such that this is our r vector, okay, and our rotation is happening about this axis like this. So omega vector is coming out, as you can see. Okay, so our n cap is coming out of the plane perpendicularly like this. Okay, so in such a case, what will be the direction of theta cap? Theta cap will be along this direction, perpendicular to r, but in the plane of the rotation. So this will be our theta cap, whereas our r cap is the unit vector in this direction. Okay, and in comparison to this, what is n cap? It is coming out of the plane. Okay, so if I looked at the same rotation in a three-dimensional sense, this is my axis of rotation. Okay, so this is the direction of omega vector going upwards. So that means my n cap is in this direction. Okay, so if I have this particle over here, its r cap is in this direction, and the rotation is happening like this. So theta cap is in this direction. Okay, and where is n cap in comparison? N cap in comparison is upwards. So you can see that they are forming a system of three mutually perpendicular unit vectors. So you can see here that n cap, theta cap, and r cap are mutually perpendicular, such that r cap and theta cap, they lie in the plane of that particle piece circular path. Okay, and n cap is along the axis of this path. Okay, and all three of them are unit vectors. So they have this very nice relationship between them, that n cap is equal to r cap cross theta cap. You can just work it out. If you point your thumb along r and your fingers along theta cap, you can see n cap is pointing out. Okay, and they are all unit vectors. So you can see that it's 1 into sine 90. So the magnitude is 1, but the direction is coming out. So now this implies that theta cross n is equal to r, and n cross r is equal to theta cap. So we have these relationships. Just like for the XYZ system, we used to have this relationship that if this is I cap, this is J cap, and perpendicular to the plane like this is K cap. So there was a right-handed system that I cross J is equal to K, J cross K is equal to I, and K cross I is equal to J. So we had that system like this. So like that over here we have this, that n, r, theta, they come in this order. So n cap is r cross theta. Okay, r cap is theta cross n. Okay, and theta cap is n cross r. So this is the relationship between the unit vector. In fact, they are mutually perpendicular unit vectors. Okay, and now this relationship, using it, we will find the relationship between r, v, and omega as vector quantities instead of the scalar equation that we used to write in circular motion, that speed v is equal to radius r into angular speed omega, v is equal to r omega. Now we will convert that into a vector relation between the position vector r, the angular velocity omega vector, and the linear velocity v of a particle. Okay, so now you see we have this relation that v is equal to r omega. Okay, and now you notice that velocity is along theta cap. Okay, r is along r cap, and omega is along n cap. So velocity, position vector, and omega are mutually perpendicular. Okay. So when we write this relation that v is equal to r omega theta cap, remember we can write theta cap as what was the order in which we used to take n r theta, this order. So theta cap is n cap cross r cap. So we can write this as omega n cap cross r cap. So that is nothing but omega cross r. So this becomes the vector relation between the three vectors: linear velocity of a particle, the angular velocity of the rigid body, okay, and the position vector of the particle with respect to the axis of rotation. So this automatically implies that V is equal to omega r in magnitude, because omega is perpendicular to r. Okay. But it also gives the proper direction. So you can see that if omega is coming out of the plane and r is like this, then automatically the direction of the velocity vector is going to be using the cross product. So point your thumb along omega and your fingers along r. So they're pointing in which direction? They're pointing in this sort of direction. So the velocity vector is like this. Whereas, for example, if we had omega which was clockwise, okay, and a position vector of a particle here. So now omega cross r, when we do, omega is into the plane and r is like this. So the direction of omega cross r is becoming like this now. So this is describing a circular path like this. This is describing a circular path like this. In this outside.
Done, sir. Done, sir. Sir, you are muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, next we look at the acceleration of a particle. Again, within a rigid body in pure rotation. Let's say omega and alpha are the angular parameters. Now, considering a particle, let's say located somewhere here, whose position vector is this one r. Okay. So it has radial unit vector along this direction, and it has tangential unit vector along this direction. Now we know that it's doing circular motion. So the velocity is r omega theta cap. So the acceleration is instantaneous rate of change of velocity. Now from circular motion concept, we know that this is the sum of centripetal acceleration plus tangential acceleration. So I'm not getting into differentiating this and deriving this again, but you know this, where centripetal acceleration is minus omega square r cap, and tangential acceleration is r alpha theta cap. So the acceleration in general of a particle will be, a vector which is pointing in this sort of direction, which has a component going radially inwards, which is your centripetal component. So this is the centripetal component of the acceleration. It will have a magnitude of r omega square or v square by r, however we choose to. And it will have a tangential component, which is along the tangential unit vector, which is equal to r alpha in magnitude. So now the thing is that this acceleration, which is the sum of centripetal plus tangential component, here also the tangential component is r alpha theta cap, or it can be defined as alpha cross r. You see, because alpha is along the axial unit vector and r is along the radial unit vector, and n cap cross r cap is equal to theta cap. See that? Okay. So we can write this in this way. And similarly, the centripetal acceleration, which we write as minus r omega square r cap, you can also write it as minus v omega r cap, because v is equal to r omega. So that's why you can write it like this. So this centripetal acceleration can be written as omega cross v. Okay, because omega is along this and v is along tangential unit vector, and you can see that n cap cross theta cap will become minus r cap, because just refer to this diagram again. If you do n cap cross theta cap, you are going in the opposite sense. So the third unit vector will come with a minus sign. So now we can also write this in a manner like this, that it is omega cross r. Because one step before, we had also seen that v is equal to omega cross r. Okay. Which basically tells us this, that the this comes from here only. from this only we get that the magnitude of V is R omega x. So again, this is the vector relationship between the various quantities. The vector relationship between the angular vectors alpha and omega with respect to the components of acceleration. So we are defining centripetal acceleration and tangential acceleration in terms of all these things, R, omega, and alpha.
So can you explain that part again?
Which part, beta?
So the acceleration centripetal.
See, the centripetal acceleration, its direction is what? Towards the center. So it's minus r cap is the unit vector, and the magnitude is r omega square.
Yes, sir.
So r omega square को हम v into omega भी लिख सकते हैं, because v is
Yes,
equal to
sir.
r omega. Okay, so it is v omega in magnitude and pointing along minus r cap. Now you notice what is your v? Your v is along the tangential direction theta cap. Okay, whereas what is your omega? It is omega along n cap. So what combination of theta and n gives you minus r cap? This combination I've shown below, that n cap cross theta cap is equal to minus r cap. So that is why the scalar relation, that centripetal acceleration's magnitude is v into omega, can be converted into the vector relation, that centripetal acceleration vector is omega vector cross v vector. Is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Okay, and then further you replace the vector v as omega cross r, so it becomes the vector triple product, that is omega cross r. So you can also check out the direction by using the right hand thumb rule in the diagram below, in the diagram above. If you point your thumb outwards, because omega is pointing out of the plane, and your fingers towards v will be in the theta cap direction. So you'll see your palm is pointing towards the center. It's in the centripetal direction. So that's why the direction of centripetal acceleration is along omega cross v. So that's another way to verify the cross product, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Okay, people, so hope this expression is clear.
Yes, sir.
So we conclude here today, and in the next lecture, we will see from this kinematics of this thing of pure rotation, that is starting from the angular parameters, how to get the velocity vector and acceleration vector of any particle using these cross product relations, how we can move on from this to dynamics. Okay, and we'll understand the concept of moment of inertia in between when we define the dynamics, etc. So what you can do is you can get started on some questions based on kinematics of pure rotation in the exercise of H.C. Verma or in the solved examples. And you can also read a little bit ahead about moment of inertia, because that is something that we'll be learning over the next couple of lectures. Okay. That's it for today's session. People, wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Okay, bye people.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Okay, bye people. Good night.